The Syrian government appears to be on the brink of collapse as Syrian rebels close in on the capture of the capital. Reuters, citing senior Syrian army officers, say President Bashar al-Assad has left the city of Damascus to an unknown destination. Syrian rebels say they've entered the capital without any sign of deployment from government forces. Earlier, rebels took control of the central city of Homs, and swarms of government forces have reportedly fled the city towards the Iraq border. The rebel forces continue to take control of large parts of government territory after last week's surprise insurgency into Aleppo. Talks in Qatar have turned to securing a transition of power. The UN Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, says there needs to be an orderly political transition to ensure the country's 13-year civil war does not continue.
This must be the start of a process that leads to the realization of the legitimate aspirations of the Syrian people and the restoration of the sovereignty, independence and unity and territorial integrity of Syria. I reiterate my call for de-escalation, for calm, for the avoidance of bloodshed and the protection of civilians in line with international humanitarian law.
Well, for more on this, we are joined by our Global Affairs Editor, John Lyons. Hi, John. The information is flowing through thick and fast right now. I know you've been sifting through it. What credible reports are you hearing about latest developments?
Well, Ruby, the breaking news is there are reports out of Damascus from Reuters that Bashar al-Assad has left Damascus to an unknown location. According to two senior army officers, it appears that the regime is collapsing incredibly quickly. Who would have thought this a week or two ago, that this group of rebels, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who had gone and basically exiled themselves to Idlib in the north of Syria, would launch such dramatic and devastating attacks against the regime, first taking Aleppo, then taking Hama, then taking Homs, taking Deraa in the south. They're taking places in the east. And the most remarkable part of this story is that here we have a 54-year-old dictatorship. The Assad family, Hafez al-Assad, the father, and then the son, Bashar, appears to be collapsing before our eyes. Not confirmed yet. We don't know exactly where Bashar al-Assad is, whether he's gone into a tunnel network or something, whether he's in fact fled the country. But credible reports now that he has boarded a plane to an unknown destination.
Wow, and a week ago, as you say, this was just unthinkable. How has this happened so fast?
Well, this group of rebels who have been obviously sitting there and they were basically largely defeated. The Assad regime in 2011, this started with a lot of uprisings and protests against the Assad regime, particularly down in Deraa in the south. And then that spread across the country. Bashar al-Assad, with the help of Russia and the help of Iran and their proxy Hezbollah, crushed this brutally. Both he and his father are known as even in the Arab world, as real brutes. They are amongst the toughest and most ruthless regimes in the entire Arab world. Basically, it looked as if they had managed to fend off the uprising. Hezbollah in particular was able to do a lot of fighting against Sunni insurgent groups. And this group, HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, is a Sunni group. So we've got the old schism, the centuries-old schism within Islam is now at the fore here in Syria now, because the Assad regime is an Alawite regime that's close to the Shia. It's an offshoot of Shia, which of course the supreme leader of Shia is Iran in every sense. And now they've obviously watched these rebels and seen that Iran's in trouble. Iran's busy with its conflict with Israel. Hezbollah has been seriously wounded by Israel. Russia is completely obsessed and focused on Ukraine, trying to get as much land as it can before Donald Trump comes in on January 20 in his inauguration. I think Donald Trump will basically say to Russia and to Ukraine, you accept what you have, end of war, and he can make Zelensky accept that, the Ukrainians, because he can threaten NATO funding. So all of that, the Trump factor, runs underneath a lot of this. I've never seen an incoming US president having so many knock-on effects and influence before he's even walked in the door. That's what's triggering a lot of this. And obviously the rebels have seen an opening, an opportunity here, and they've swooped into it.
And you say we have these credible reports by Reuters that Bashar al-Assad has left the capital. Do we have any sense of where he might have gone?
No, we don't. We don't yet. I'll be waiting this afternoon. I think the next step will be to see an official announcement. But then once it's... the rebels are basically hunting for Bashar al-Assad at the moment around Syria. It's quite incredible. They are actually going looking for him at various locations where they think he might be, and he's not there. These dictators in the Arab world, they like Gaddafi, like many before him, Assad, they'll often have a plan for should this sort of thing happen, escape routes. We saw it many years ago in the Philippines with Ferdinand Marcos when he had to flee with US help. And so he would have been working out what is the escape plan. We don't know. Obviously, Russia would be a possible home for him. I imagine Vladimir Putin would set him up with a dacha there somewhere in the countryside of Russia. Iran would also be a home for him. They have been the two closest allies to Assad. But now what happens there? This is a group taking over HTS that the Americans regard as a terrorist group. They look like they're the incoming power in Syria. So the idea of stability is far from certain. Plus, there's all these proxies that all feed into Syrian politics. The Turks have their own agenda. The Turks, the Russians, the Qataris, the Americans, the Israelis. There have been reports that the Israelis have been providing weapons to some of these rebels. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Obviously, the rebels wanted the end of Assad and Iran's influence. So does Israel, which puts Israel in a possible strange alliance of self-interest with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. So you've got this incredible sort of mixture, potpourri of all of these international global political sort of issues all swirling around Syria. So the next thing we wait for is to see whether Bashar al-Assad has in fact fled.
And with these cities all being taken, are you surprised we haven't seen more resistance or a more effective resistance? I think it says a lot about what the public there thinks. The Assad regime crushed the uprising. It was a popular uprising. The Assad regime there has been ruthless. Unless you've been part of the Alawite or the Shia elite, it's been a miserable place to be, Syria, for many people. And so a lot of the locals have actually been welcoming them. And the rebels are quite smart. They are actually going in, they're not shooting, they're not firing. And many people in places like Aleppo and Homs and Hama are actually welcoming the rebels. Now, whether or not that kumbaya sort of philosophy lasts for very long, I'm not sure, because there will be sectarian differences break out. This is not particularly going to be any sort of easy transition.